And a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is Ted Hicks from Late Night Parents. Ways to follow the show, latenightparents.com. Coming to you with a couple of stories, not an emergency pod, but just haven't done a pod in a while. Gonna do one in the next 24 hours with my buddy Danny Thompson, but we're gonna load up with some guests over the next month and get this engine going regularly back to its weekly schedule. Um, I will say for the last couple of months, it's been, bi-weekly, where I would get like 2 pods in a month. And that's due to family and due to just everything getting in the way of doing it. So, a couple of quick stories. Want to talk about MLB leadoff. Got a chance to look at the streaming services because got Amazon with 21 games for the Yankees. You got Apple with Friday Night Baseball, and you've got Peacock with Sunday leadoff. And they are corralling more of the national pastime as sports viewers try to juggle multiple apps. Because, we're all going back to the days when these games were on over the air television, and, we get it. These sports, major league sports organizations are chasing a dollar. They want to squeeze every last bit that they can squeeze. And it always pushes back on the consumer. So the fans are scrambling. They're looking for their favorite teams. Some of them who might have MLB TV subscription are still running into situations where the games are blocked out or blacked out. They're not available. So we're at the dawn of the streaming era, was once promised to be brighter future for sports fans, a blissful world of the a la carte consumption in which everyone could break free of their overstuffed, overpriced cable subscriptions and pay only what they really wanted to see. I think people have realized they want their cable back. The reality is baseball diehards are discovering this season it's not as easy. To watch all the games they want, many fans must have to pay not only for the cable, but also for multiple streaming services. And once they figured out which app or channel is showing their favorite team, they will be left hoping that the live stream doesn't crash at a crucial moment. Kind of a situation that I ran into the initial night of watching Friday Night Baseball. I mean, though it's a stellar broadcast, but the Apple TV app crashed for me on my Samsung TV about 3 to 4 times that night. So the current fragmented landscape can be traced back in part to last year when ESPN decided to scale back the number of games it would broadcast as part of the new contract. Afterward, MLB sold a large portion of the games to Apple and to Comcast Corp's Peacock. This season, as I stated before, the Yankees will need a third streaming service because of Amazon.com Inc., which owns a stake in the team's cable channel, started streaming a package of 21 games that air exclusively on Prime Video. So subscriptions to Prime Video start at $9 a month. Peacock Sunday slate will be behind a $5 a month paywall, and the games on Apple are free. So you run into people that never miss, games from their beloved team, but you got to get to a point where you have, let's say, like my dad's age, who's in the you know in the elderly bracket, and they might need a little bit of tech support because if they can't get to Prime Video, they can't download the Peacock app or the Apple TV app, they're left out. So, um, current arrangement, as we know it, it's intensified the debate over how sports leagues and broadcasters should best strike a balance between reaching a younger generation weaned on streaming while continuing to serve the older demographic, still tethered to their traditional TV packages. The median age of baseball fans is 57, and that's the oldest among major sports, according to a study last year by advertising buyer Magna. Chris Mad Dog Russo, a popular 62-year-old radio host in the New York area, has described baseball's deal with Apple TV as dangerous. The old-time Met fan living in Plainview, he's going to be raising hell a week, a week from Friday, and that was like at the start of the MLB, Apple TV big launch. He said, Russo, on his Sirius XM radio show before Apple's first broadcast between the Mets and the Nationals. And then baseball wonders why everyone's so upset. So from the start, baseball was one of the earliest adopters of streaming. The league has been making its games available online since 2002, 5 years before Netflix began offering an online option. Noah Garden, chief revenue officer at the MLB, said in an interview that the league decided to push deeper into streaming this season, in part to be less vulnerable in the years ahead to cable TV blackouts. So in some cases, disputes between cable TV companies and local sports channels have left fans unable to see their teams for long stretches. And we run into that every once in a while where we're sitting there and we're seeing all these different commercials for MLB TV or Yes Network or SNY is having an issue with this TV service provider, Cox or Verizon or Optimum or any or Spectrum. We've seen that on many occasions. So you got to stay ahead of this stuff. So you got to be focused on reaching a wide variety of fans, and streaming gives the MLB that ability to do that. Noah Garten said the Apple broadcasts in particular are meant to reach a new, younger audience. On screen, the game shows probability odds. They also feature a booth with announcers aiming to be less technical and less hardcore. So far, newcomers have gotten mixed reviews from fans. The current annoyances faced by baseball fans are similar to issues cropping up in other sports as well. 3 years ago, Bethany Bell, a tennis fan who lives in Nyack, New York, canceled a cable subscription and signed up for Tennis Channel Plus. Launched in 2014, the streaming service, which is owned by Sinclair Broadcasting Incorporated, costs $110 a year and promises subscribers that they can see thousands of matches each year around the planet. But Ball soon realized that although she could watch early rounds of the tournament on the app, the finals, others, often required a cable subscription. Seeing the majors required even adding more services. Eventually, she signed up for Peacock to watch the French Open and ESPN Plus to watch the US Open and Wimbledon. She said, I'm still frustrated and I can't see all the matches I want to. So for now, media and league executives are preaching patience. On a recent call with reporters, Rick Cordella, executive vice president of Peacock, said sports has splintered across multiple streaming apps, just like other forms of entertainment, such as scripted series and movies. It will get easier for fans, he suggested, once the newer services reach mass audiences. So there's a litany of other content that's spread across the 4 or 5 biggest streamers, and sports really is no different. So they're hoping that Peacock is ubiquitous as the pay TV ecosystem, and this is the moment in time. Um, Garden of Major League Baseball predicts that the complaints will eventually die down once the entertainment industry starts bundling multiple streaming services together, making it easy for sports fans to find games in a single place. It's a vision of streaming future that's starting to sound remarkably like, guess what? Your recent cable bundle that was in the past. So disruption is hard, and we think the bundle is going to recreate itself, and the friction that consumers and fans are feeling is going to work itself out. Well, you kind of hope so. We have a ton of hardcore MLB fans out there. Um, this is Ted Hicks, Late Night Parents. Ways to follow the show, latenightparents.com. Want to get into 5 tips to minimize tech distractions for homeschooling. So, I mean, the pandemic sparked a wave of parents choosing homeschooling for their children, a decision that seems to be sticking. According to analysis conducted by the Associated Press, the number of students being homeschooled increased by 63% over the 2020-2021 school year and only fell by 17% in 2021/2022 school year. So when it comes to education, we know technology is a great enabler, but also a potential distraction. With May being Homeschool Awareness Month, would you, you know, it's here's some tips that we're going to provide to you to help parents minimize unnecessary tech distractions at home. So the folks at One Question, an app that sneakily introduces micro-learning moments in kids' daily lives, would like to share the following. Number 1, consider having a dedicated tablet that's solely for schoolwork, one that's preset with only curriculum aligned apps. Number 2, ensure notifications are turned off so that both you and your child don't get sidetracked. Number 3, change the settings on your child's device to black and white versus color. This makes the phone usage less appealing, meaning less aimless scrolling during downtime. Number 4, have a set schedule with built-in tech breaks for lunch, stretching, reading out of a textbook, etc. And number 5, make staying focused a game by setting timers to get specific tasks done or rewarding your child for successfully completing the task at hand. And that is 5 tips to minimize tech distractions for homeschooling parents. Want to talk about real briefly the mass exodus that everyone keeps always talking about. Every time you hear there's a mass exodus out of the tri-state area. We did an article over the past weekend, and we named it. It's a huge JPEG of the words "I'm leaving." So here are the top 10 places with most move outs. So we're moving out, or so says a recent survey that put Long Island and Hudson Valley among the top 10 areas with the most move outs in the country this year. The Pod survey, which ranked Los Angeles as the city with the most move outs, said the results could be due to people relocating after their initial pandemic moves. So I'll go through real briefly. Well, you already know Los Angeles is number one, but we'll start from 10 to 1. Ranked number 10, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Ranked number 9, Hudson Valley, New York. Ranked number 8, Stockton, Modesto, California. Ranked 7, Washington, D.C. Ranked 6, Seattle, Washington. Ranked 5, Central New Jersey. Ranked number 4, my hometown, Long Island, New York. Ranked 3, Chicago, Illinois. Ranked 2, Northern California, basically the San Francisco area. And of course, as mentioned, ranked 1, Los Angeles, California. Unfortunately, a lot of these cities or these areas are Democratic cities. You hate to throw the politics in there, but proof is in the pudding. Pods also noticed that many of the cities in the top 10 are hubs for major industry employers, and employers deciding to adopt work from home policies may be a reason for such high numbers. So we're going to get into our final couple of topics. One is on Netflix and where Hollywood and Silicon Valley collide. So Netflix was absent when Hollywood executives gathered in Las Vegas last month to preview the year ahead in movies, or at least officially. Its film chief, Scott Stuber, didn't attend, nor did Netflix make a presentation to theater owners as other studios do. But behind the scenes, Netflix executives met one-on-one with representatives of major theater chains. Senior execs said Netflix have discussed trying releasing a few movies with longer windows, likely 40 days, in thousands of theaters later this year. Two potential candidates are the sequel to Knives Out and the new Alejandro Gonzalez. So if that works, the company could release as many as a dozen titles in theaters going forward. So Netflix has released movies in the theaters before. It's even given some time for like an exclusive window for a few weeks. But Netflix has yet to release a movie in a theater owned by AMC, Cineworld Group, the two largest chains in the world. It needs to deal with them to give its titles a proper global run. So Netflix has been talking about major movie chains for years, and the two sides have been unable to reach a deal. I can't even think of a more stressful job or a time for a company to deal with than what Netflix is dealing with right now. From losing capital to losing subscribers to identifying your business model, understanding that live sports is the key, finally going that route. Maybe I'm hearing, some things with Netflix with their comedy, maybe doing some live comedy, live sports, F1 racing. They got to look at, they got to be a player in that NBA package that's going to come up in 2024. You got to be in it to win it. So let's start with the theaters. Despite the blockbuster success of recent comic book movies, Ticket sales are still down about 40% before the pandemic. Theaters blame the lack of new titles. They need new movies every week to attract customers, and major studios have shifted many titles to streaming. No company in Hollywood makes more movies than Netflix. Even if the majority of them aren't fit for theaters, many of them are. So the company thought it had a deal with theaters 3 years ago when it offered them exclusive rights to The Irishman for 45 days. It was a movie I really enjoyed, but it was a movie that you needed to watch in multiple sittings. Theaters balked because they wanted the movie for at least 2 months. But thanks to the pandemic, the theaters all accepted the 45-day window. 45 days is looking like the new norm. Theaters are ready to do a deal, and, you know, it's just the big obstacle to do a deal now resides inside Netflix. You got two co-chief, executive offers, Reed Hastings and Ted Sarandos, and they must bless any deal that gives theater the exclusive rights to its movies for an extended period of time. More importantly, they would need to agree to spend money to market these titles. So, question: whenever you have two co-CEOs of anything, you actually have none, because you're going to have two different people with two different visions. Theaters will only need to do a deal with Netflix if the company promises to spend a considerable amount of money telling people to watch the movie in the theaters. Netflix has seldom spent money marketing individual titles ahead of their release. It's never been in the business of telling people to watch a movie anywhere but its service. But the slowing growth of Netflix streaming service has forced the company to change its strategies. So it's going to not only introduce an advertising supported tier, it's going to crack down on passwords, two steps it long resisted. And I mean, I can tell you this much: when it hits my household, it's going to be something. It's going to be an eye opener, because this is what everyone's going to go into. Because you have family members that have the login, the master login, that have their own profile, that don't live in your household. So it's real easy. You just look at the multiple IP addresses that are coming in for these individual accounts, and boom, you got it. You bill that person each individual login. So the advertising tier will attract more customers to the streaming service, and the password crackdown would generate additional money from existing customers. Releasing a movie in theaters may do neither. The company would make money from theatrical release, but the data-driven company will want to quantify whether releasing a movie in the theaters benefits its service as well. The theatrical release may cannibalize viewers on streaming, but the popularity for these theatrical releases on major streaming services suggests that the marketing campaigns and word of mouth can also make the movie more attractive when they appear on streaming. So it's premature to say whether or not the co-CEOs are ready to make another big shift, but it's also worth noting that Netflix and theaters have done this tango many, many times in the past. But there's never been a better time for everyone to get involved and try something new, like right now. Um, well, I'll say this much: they've got to do something, and they got to do something quick, because when you're bleeding, what was this last quarter, the first quarter, 200,000 subscribers, is being forecasted for 2 million subscribers for Q2. So Netflix slowdown is just a Netflix slowdown. It's just their problem for now, because Disney added 8 million customers last quarter. 8 million. So you got one service losing 200,000. You got another service adding 8 million customers. You had Peacock adding about 4 million customers. You had HBO with its new bosses adding 3 million customers, which means that every streaming service other than Netflix grew in the first 3 months of 2022. So, Netflix critics have been quick to say its recent struggles are a streaming problem, while there may be a lower ceiling on some of these services than we thought. The other services are still growing. So, Wall Street remains skeptical. Disney stock didn't jump, and the company tried to reassure investors by saying that it would reduce content spending this year by $1 billion. I remember when we used to be on WGBB and we would talk about the amount of billions that Netflix and some of these streaming services would spend. It'd be like 5 to 8 to 10 billion a year on just new content. If you want to poke some holes in network and Disney's story of the 8 million new subscribers, you should start with India. More than half of Disney's new customers last quarter hailed from the country. And the average Indian customer is worth about 15% of the average customer everywhere else in terms of revenue. So to make matters worse, Disney Plus, Hotstar added millions of customers thanks to his possession of cricket rights, and it's not that clear if it's going to retain those rights. Real quickly, get into the biggest tour of the world right now is Coldplay, British rock group, selling about 50,000 tickets a night to its current tour, one of the few packing stadium, but it stands out for another reason, the cost. Coldplay is only charging $77.80 a night, which is less than half the cost of a ticket for Bad Bunny. It's the only top 10 tour charging less than $100. One story I'm sure Danny and I will get into is Tom Brady. Um, he's going to be the lead anchor for Fox broadcast whenever he retires. He will reportedly be paid $37.5 million a year, the biggest deal in sports TV. He's not just going to be an analyst, folks. He's going to be working for Fox Corp. Marketing, advertising, you name it, collaborations, uh, you know, all that stuff that he was doing on ESPN is definitely going to be exclusively to Fox. And you got to think about it because Fox let Joe Buck and Troy Aikman walk, supposedly because it didn't want to spend that much money on football broadcasters. And now we'll pay Brady more than either of them. So we get it. He may, this might be Joe Montana 2.0, or it might not. Other thing I do want to mention with Spotify, it's restructured its podcasting programming department. You got Julie McNamara, Max Cutler, and Bill Simmons. They're in prominent positions. Want to really talk lastly about Warner Brothers Discovery. I don't know, is that going to be the actual name? But they fired more top executives as part of the post-merger restructuring. The Discovery leadership is basically dismissed most of the people who ran HBO Max. What do you think about that? And Warner Brothers Discovery and BT reached an agreement on a BT Sports joint venture. So BT and Warner Brothers Discovery have confirmed that they're going to go ahead to do a 50-50 joint venture company that will see the operating business of BT Sports transferred to the U.S. conglomerate, WBD. The new offering will include content from both BT Sport and Eurosport, including UEFA Champions League, Europa League, the Premier League, Premiership Rugby, UFC, the Olympic Games, Australian Open, French Open, the Tour de France, and the Winter Sports World Cup season. These companies said customers who have access to BT Sport and BT directly, and the majority of the BT customers will receive Discovery Plus as part of their existing subscriptions. The joint venture will be structured as 50-50 joint venture, with each party holding equal voting rights. So both BT Sport and Eurosport UK will initially retain their separate brands and product propositions in the market before being brought together under a single brand in the future. So the two partners plan to enter this distribution agreement, and they would distribute the combined sports content to the new and existing customers on their respective platforms and apps. So a lot of big movement in the world of this new Warner Brothers Discovery combined company. We saw the stuff with CNN Plus. We saw that got clipped really quick out the gate. I know they're looking a lot into cutting back on some scripted TV. They've got a huge portfolio of channels, linear channels, streaming services across the board. I really want to see what the new Discovery Plus HBO Max app is going to look like. Really interested in that. What else with that? You know what was so great? What was great was there was Game 7 tonight with the Rangers and Penguins, and it was on TBS. And then over on TNT, there was what was it? Phoenix and Dallas, which turned out to be a horrible game. But it was just so funny that both of their channels, TNT and TBS, were just clicking. So there are other answers outside of ESPN. Yes, they are the worldwide leader, but you got options out there. You got the Peacock out there. You got, of course, we said Turner Sports is out there. You got the Viacom CBS option out there. Big shout out to CBS News. I was watching their news streaming service, and it seemed refreshing because I was sitting there and watching it, and it didn't have that left versus right, that Democrat versus Republican, that extreme left right garbage that these other cable channels have. So spend a lot of time watching that. I spend a lot of time watching CNBC. Like, I'll chew away time watching CNBC. I really try not to turn to MSNBC or CNN anymore. And to a certain degree also Fox News, because it just gives you that angle that you just want to hear the news, where you just want to know what's happening in the world without that edge. So big shout out to those streaming services. With that, we are going to say Forced Perspective, Late Night Parent episode is a wrap, and we will be back very shortly with another episode. Thanks again. I know I was all over the place talking about media, talking about, some of the stuff that we tend to post about on the website. So this is Ted Hicks. Ways to follow the show, latenightparents.com. Go there. New blog articles are posted every day. That's about it. We're out.